Welcome back to the Bazaar. I'm Inko, and it's time for Bazaar Talks. This is our bi-weekly, podcast where I discuss how I think the meta is shaking up, which I can't really do this time. I considered not making Bazaar Talks at all, because as you can see by my rank, I have not been given much of a chance to play the game in this past week. I really just haven't been able to play much, so my understanding of the meta is severely limited. I haven't even really been able to watch the game much. As a quick preface to this Bazaar Talks, this is just going to be me giving feedback on how Pig doesn't feel healthy for the game to me, and how the Reddit censorship and community management for the game feels really, not just bad, but like misled in its goals in a way that I don't understand. This is going to be a negative video. If you're not down for that, I encourage you to click off now. So while I consider not making the Bazaar Talks podcast, I'm going to cover two things that are not really about the meta, but are important to the game. One is, again, Reddit censorship being badly managed and community management really needing work. But another, which I'm going to start on because I think it's the more important issue, is the overall design of Pygmalion. And I say this as somebody who really liked Pig when Pig's early game was more consistent, and possibly because of that, Pig was overpowered. Now that Pig seems closer in line to the design philosophy for Pig, and not just like Pig is the most powerful hero, but Pig has weak early game and Pig has strong late game. I understand this may be changing just to Pig is overpowered again, depending on how the new set plays. I haven't gotten to see it really. But the design philosophy behind Pig, to a lot of people, seems to be that Pig is the late game hero. His early game is weak, his late game is really powerful. And the longer I have played, the more I've just started to dislike everything about Pig. Not just playing as Pig, but playing against Pig on both sides of the coin at every point in the game. When I'm playing against Pig, and I have a weak build and I get to breathe a sigh of relief because I matched into a Pig, that's not actually a good thing. It's very strange. When I'm playing a good build and I match into a Pig in the early game, I'm to some degree frustrated that I don't get to see how my build compares to other high quality early game builds. When I'm playing literally anything and I match into late game Pig, even when I am playing Pig, I'm like, ah shit, here we go again. At every point in the game, playing against Pig does not feel the same as playing against another hero, to the point that I have unironically said to people, I think that the game might just be more fun if Pygmalion wasn't in it. Because you have these early game matches that are just freebies because you're playing against a Pig. You have these late game matches that you could never have won no matter how you piloted your run because it's against a Pig that high rolled. Because in the late game, Pigs that didn't high roll are already dead. And the experience playing as Pig is just as frustrating being a punching bag for the first 6 days unless you high roll and hit very specific items. I find everything about Pig's play pattern of having by far the worst early game and by far the best late game to just sort of be unhealthy for the game. The more I play, the more I'm like just disgruntled with the general state of Pig. And I suppose you can make similar arguments for something like Weapon Vanessa, right? That there's this build for Vanessa that's really severely advantaged in the early game and falls off a cliff in the late game. And if you see Vanessa load in and all her items have little red squares at the top, you panic on days 1 through 3. But if it is day 11 or 12, you're like, oh, thank God, they're falling off. And that's similarly not a fun thing. At the same time, builds that have different power spikes at different points in the game should exist. It's unavoidable, and that's a fine place for cards to inhabit. I think my issue with Pig is that all Pigs are Weapon Vanessa, right? Well, inverse Weapon Vanessa, but in terms of power curve, almost all Pigs, you know, the ones that don't get specifically Jabalian Drummer, one of the new items like Showcase, almost all Pigs are weak early and strong late. Whereas a lot of Vanessas simply are not Weapon Vanessas. And a lot of Weapon Vanessas do not high roll to such a point that they just beat you automatically in the early game, which I don't really feel is the case with day 13 plus Pig. And to be clear, I have no idea what the clean solution for the gameplay problem Pig poses is. I know that it's there and that I feel it, that every time I play as Pig, I'm not having as much fun because in the early game, I am just trying my heart out to get 1 or 2 wins, and it's unlikely to even get that unless I see very specific items. And then in the late game, it depends on how the early game went, right? If I have a death left, if I'm not on my last life, and I have like 7 wins on day 12, that's fine. But a lot of the time as Pig, I'm just like, God, I hope I don't see other Pigs in the late game because I've already used my cheat death to stabilize, and there's a very real chance they high rolled harder than me. Playing as Pig, I don't enjoy the patterns for Pig. It somehow feels much worse to see a late game Pig as a late game Pig than it does to see a Weapon Vanessa as a Weapon Vanessa in the early game. And always in these videos, I kind of try to avoid giving specific feedback on what the problem is and how to fix it. I don't really have any idea where to start with Pig, but I think it's important to give the feedback that I don't think Pig is in a healthy spot. And this is something where, like, it was never going to be really commonly felt in the first several months of the game's lifespan. It's the sort of unfun that eats at you over time as you get more familiar with the game. And it's just like, oh, cool, early game Pig, I win. Or, oh, cool, late game Pig, I guess I'm going to use my cheat death here. And it doesn't always play out like that. I know it's more complicated than that, but the gameplay feel of it, the user experience of fighting pigs or playing as Pig, to me feels so much less interesting than every other character, both as and against. And I don't know how to change it or how to fix it, but I think it's worth spending a couple of minutes in one of these videos just bringing up the fact that I don't like the way that Pig feels at all. As someone who mained Pig when Pig was just straight up overpowered, Pig felt good then because Pig was consistently strong across the entire game, but he was too strong across the entire game. He was just the best. Now that he's still got roughly the same level of late game power and his early game's been brought in line, that might technically be balanced, but it feels terrible to me at every point in the game. Especially since at a fundamental level, you're much more volatile with Pig since losing the late game is so much more dangerous, and it's a game of high rolls. Even the best Pigs can lose in the late game. I really do not like the strategy of stabilizing in a way that uses your death enchant and then is hoping you never see someone stronger than you until day 15, which is so hard to reliably do. I've got videos up showcasing that very recently. It's just, as Pig, I really don't enjoy it, but even playing against Pigs, it doesn't make the game more fun. If there was a little button I could click that was like, do not show this character on the ladder, I would click Pig immediately. I wouldn't even hesitate. He's the only character where I feel like the game is less fun because he's in the game. And that would probably make a lot of characters harder, to be honest, because you can't see early game Pig anymore, and these characters can beat Pigs on days 10 through 13 even. But after day 12, like 13's a long shot, and day 14 plus, I don't ever want to see a Pig. But then again, on most characters other than Pig, I'm already dead. I don't know. I'm done ranting about it. I don't like the way Pig feels. But something I absolutely hate is the state of the Reddit recently. This is currently stickied in the Reddit official tempo feedback form for anything related to server connection issues. And they have been locking pretty much any thread about this, and they've locked this thread immediately. So essentially, discussion of server connection issues is banned right now, because you're supposed to just go fill out the form and not talk about it. Don't talk about it in the sticky, don't talk about it in your own post. There is this message from Northern Lion that got locked immediately before any discussion happened. There is this other post, there are really no plans to fix this, locked immediately. And this isn't even server connection. Like, it is related to the internet, I suppose. But I don't know why I had to download a 4 GB patch after server maintenance, because that's just the whole ass game. It doesn't seem like server connection issues to me. And just not being allowed to talk about it is strange. You can argue like this is not a productive or useful conversation. That's not the job of every post on the Reddit. There are so many posts that are just check out my 10-win build that is not a productive or useful conversation. And essentially, as far as I'm concerned, this stickied thread here is not actually to fix server connection issues. This stickied thread is to give them the justification to just lock any thread relating to server connection issues. Although they probably should have made the form a little bit more all-encompassing, since this is not a server connection issue that they've locked. And to briefly show off this rollback form, I do want to show off that it doesn't feel like it's designed to gather data. The most important part of bug reporting is to make it easy to do. People don't want to click on a bug report form and fill it out. Like, compared to clicking report bug in the game, the idea of going to the Reddit to find the rollback's additional info form and filling it out, that's already a big barrier to entry. So I've got to ask why it was designed in this way that has so much more barrier to entry, where I don't know that you should be asking me as a mandatory thing what my Reddit or Discord username is. This seems egregious to me. Like, if you explain that this was to potentially try to contact me for further information, okay, but it still should probably not be a mandatory thing. It should just be an optional thing. Also, you don't know which one I've done, so it should probably ask for specification in that. Like, it's just not when your community management is famous for banning people for no reason, making it mandatory to give you my username doesn't feel good in a way that's hard to explain. So just immediately, it's like, here's my email, here's what's associated with my Tempo account. That's understandable. This should be explained and optional, because let's be real, we all know they're never contacting anyone who filled out one of these forms. This just shouldn't be here. Also, I will note the first time I tried to submit one of these just to see how they worked, it told me I couldn't. I think it works now. Yeah, it works now. So whatever that was, I'll assume that's not Tempo's fault. And then there's hardware specs, which makes total sense. Obviously, some people don't know what their hardware specs are, but they can just write IDK under that. That's the real reason other is here. I was like, what do you mean other? You have less than 4, every range between 4 and 16, and more than 16. Other is I don't know. So this is totally fine. But then I need to explain what other is. As I clicked it, makes sense. But then coming to the final page, this is like all that it needs to be. And people could just post this to that discussion thread. Immediate bug report, right? If the thread wasn't locked, and you can say like this is a much more efficient way of collecting bug reports, but it's not going to get as many bug reports. And the point of having community management is to inefficiently collect data from the community to some degree. But anyway, that's all obviously wholly unrelated to this post, which just got locked because it's a negative post about the game. That's the real reason. And you can be like, oh, it's a low effort post. What would be high effort? How do you make this post high effort? The question is, why has this not been fixed in half a year? There are a couple of other posts I've seen that are locked. There are probably a lot more posts that simply never appear due to the filters on the Reddit that prevent you from making a post about certain topics, where it'll await moderator approval if you use certain keywords, and then they'll just not approve it. I've shown this off in previous Bazaar Talks. I wonder if the people running the Bazaar subreddit are able to see how many people try to make a post in the Bazaar subreddit, it gets blocked, and then they never ever do anything else in the Bazaar subreddit. Because very sincerely, this to me feels like trying to drive a narrative for no reason. The game doesn't have problems. It's okay for your subreddit to discuss things that aren't good. This isn't a witch hunt. This is just a problem your game has, and stopping people from talking about it, like censorship just doesn't go well. It makes people feel pretty bad about things to know that their voice is not allowed to be spoken. What they're saying is not allowed to be discussed. And again, like if you're not allowed to discuss these problems and the sticky about these problems, where the fuck can you? And the answer is certainly not the community Discord, because if you want to discuss negative things on the community Discord, there's a very real chance you will get banned. I have seen people be like, hey, I don't mean to be insulting, this kind of looks like AI art to me. And then have a completely normal, level-headed conversation with the community manager about how the art is made and how it's not AI art. They part ways separately, they've had their question answered, and then they get banned later by somebody else who saw the conversation and thought it was apparently unacceptable. I want to be clear that like trying to create this false impression of a perfect game doesn't actually help you. No game is perfect. Having discussions of negative things on your subreddit is completely fine. This post by Northern Lion got 2,500 upvotes. For a while yesterday, the most upvoted hottest thread in the Bazaar was a locked complaint with no discussion allowed and no explanation allowed. This doesn't even say, hey, there's a sticky about this, please don't post this. It just tells you to go fill out a form. And I'm not even sure who this is addressed to, because it's probably not addressed to OP, since OP is not Northern Lion. And I doubt Northern Lion's gonna spend his time doing this post about a game he does not remember days ago, based on a Reddit thread he doesn't even know exists since nobody was allowed to talk in it. It's bizarre. I assure you, whatever upside you think the community image has from preventing these discussions is not as important as like having locked threads be your hottest threads. The most important aspect of any community is just how large and active that community is. And I know that you can make arguments in the extreme where it's like, oh, you don't want some crazy degenerate Twitch chat community, you want to have people actually having discussions. That's way past the point of what we're moderating, right? if we're allowing every single post that has like just a build with 10 wins, but no discussion of certain negative features that are very problematic to the game experience, that's not like, oh, we don't want to have low effort community. We don't want to have a bunch of nonsense in our community. That's very specifically not about the quality of the discussion. It's about the type of discussion. And this sort of censorship where people are getting banned from the Discord, where people aren't allowed to voice their opinions and are going to be alienated from the Reddit, this is going to result in having a smaller, less active community in the long run. And the advantage is that your game falsely appears to have less problems than it does right now, which like I would kind of get if it were still the month of official launch. But let's be real, this is a mobile game. This game's official launch had no advertising, didn't come with the codex. It doesn't have so many of the features you would have expected with official launch. And while I can't find for the life of me find the original quote from Raynad, I can only find articles quoting it. I remember hearing it. The open beta 1 month before official launch was described as the bare minimum for an open beta. And then we went from that to official launch in 1 month flat with all of these problems that don't feel like they should be in an official launch game that are now forbidden to be talked about. And I can accept that like this game is meant to make most of its money from the mobile audience, that the official launch with the advertising push, the real win, not the one people didn't know happened last month, is gonna happen when the game releases on mobile. But this isn't the desktop launch of the game. This isn't the mobile launch of the game. This is just a random month where negative discussion about a very negative thing in the game isn't allowed, which means discussion about connectivity isn't allowed. And I don't understand why. Like I said, I would get it to some degree if this were happening during the official launch month of the game, or like during the mobile launch of the game. But this is just a random month after the game launched on desktop that to me very genuinely feels just like extended beta testing with a different title for the mobile launch of the game based on how the press has been handled for the game, based on all the bugs that still persist, all the features that still aren't there. This is not a time when driving a narrative has any particular impact on the game. This is just censorship for censorship's sake. I don't know what the end goal of this is supposed to be. And it seems to very seriously misunderstand the goals of community management and what makes a community good. Feels like too broad of a term, but I'm gonna go with good. I generally find the community management decisions that have been made by Tempo to be baffling. And then on top of that, I have a very hard time taking it in good faith because Tempo said they were gonna step away from managing the subreddit and then backed out and didn't actually do that. They continued running the same filters and not approving posts that were upsetting people. They continued censoring and locking posts like this. And I don't know to what end. It doesn't just feel bad and annoy me. I don't even understand why we're doing it. Like, what's the goal of all the censorship? What narrative are we driving to what ends? Because it's not easy to do what they're doing. They're having to like make these filters, not approve these posts, to lock these threads. There is effort going into this thing that is actively detrimental for the long-term health of the community, and for the life of me, I cannot rationalize why it's happening. Also, sincerely, I view the game as still an open beta. The complete lack of press for the launch, the lack of basic new player features, the lack of a launcher that actually works and doesn't re-download the game all the time, the fact you still can't reconnect properly, all these things feel like open beta. I view the desktop launch as the extended open beta for the mobile release, and it's because Tempo didn't have any of the fanfare you associate with the launch of a game. Tempo didn't fix so many of the problems. They launched so quickly after entering open beta. It genuinely feels to me like the desktop launch is just the mobile testing part 2. I felt that way basically since launch and just haven't talked about it. I could be entirely wrong about that, ascribing reasons that aren't there to actions that are just random chance. But it makes logical sense for them to view desktop launch as the testing for the mobile platform. Like that is where the money will come from in the long run. And that's not just a random spur of the moment thing I was popping off about. That is something I very genuinely believe. It's just something I very rarely have a reason to discuss at all. And when it comes to driving a narrative, I'd get it if we were launching mobile this month. If we were launching mobile in like a week, but it's the middle of a month. There's no way mobile's launching in 1 week. I don't know why we're driving this narrative. And also, having all these negative threads doesn't look bad on you if you fix the problem. So people like go back to the history of the Reddit. They're like, oh, people are really upset about this thing that doesn't exist. The game's being developed well. And we know they're gonna fix it before mobile as well, right? Because they can't use the launcher on mobile. They intend to, when they make mobile, replace the launcher entirely. I don't know what narrative we're driving. I cannot rationalize the censorship on the Discord. It's just a dumb waste of effort that makes everyone upset, including the people who are directly responsible for censoring it. I don't know what the fuck we're doing. Anyways, I've said everything I have to say on the matter. I really dislike the way the subreddit has been managed historically, same with the Discord, although I go to the Discord a lot less because it's less useful, I guess, for gathering information from a community than a Reddit is. But the main reason I wanted to make this video was to give the feedback on Pig at the start. I really genuinely don't think the way that Pig plays is good for the user experience of having fun. I feel like Pig's early game weakness, late game oppression, just in general, both as and against Pig, isn't really making the game more fun. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there are a lot of players that enjoy fighting Pig in the early game, and that there's some merit to be derived from the stress of having to worry about late game Pigs. I don't view the game that way. I'd be interested in hearing if you do, if you think playing against Pigs is interesting and fun, because I don't. I feel pretty cynical about the play patterns of Pig, and I don't think I'm right about that. I think that's up to personal taste a lot, but I wanted to give my feedback that I just straight up don't enjoy the way Pig interacts with the game from any perspective right now. And I'm hoping that when people tell me I'm wrong, they actually make compelling arguments and I can get out of my negative Nancy self and go be more positive about the game, because I don't like hating Pig. I used to be a Pig main. The character is really cool. I just don't like his power curve and the way it feels at every point in the game, both as and against, and I'm going in circles again, so let's wrap it up. Thank you for your time. If you made it this far, then really, genuinely, I appreciate it. If you could leave a like on the video to help boost it up in the algorithm, help the channel grow, it means a lot to me, really does help. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.